Hi, I'm Jude Gold from Guitar Player Magazine. You just heard me trying to play the Mean Street intro, Van Halen's famous lick. I always have fun with that stuff, especially when I have the right rig. And look what we have here today for you to check out. It's the ultimate Van Halen rig, really, which is the EVH Series 5153 head and cabinet, which is built and distributed by the Fender Musical Instruments Corporation. And of course, couldn't have done it without this instrument, the EVH Frankenstein Replica, an exact replica of Eddie Van Halen's most famous guitar. If you want to read the full review, you should read Matt Blackett's review in the April issue of Guitar Player Magazine with your friend Alan Holdsworth on the cover. Great interview. First thing you've probably heard about it is its immense price tag. It does retail in the arena of about 25 grand, and there's only a few of them. The reason it costs so much is the custom shop luthiers toiled over each one of these for weeks to make it exactly the same as the famous Van Halen guitar that it is built after, Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstein guitar. The guitar in question was originally had this kind of a crisscross stripe pattern that you may remember, but it was black and white, and it was on the cover of Van Halen 1. He soon thereafter, after people were copying him, and even some companies were even selling similar guitars with similar paint jobs and just copying his game, he threw everybody off the trail by ripping up the pick guard, putting in a dummy pickup here that doesn't do anything. This thing is about, seriously, 2/3 of an inch below the strings. It's not even in pickup range per se. Throwing in some electrical junk here. This looks like an old 5-way switch. And he painted it red, white, and black to make his even more unique than it already was before. The mojo of this guitar is this pickup, which is modeled after Eddie Van Halen's original pickup, which he potted himself after several failed attempts with other pickups. It has no spring mounts. It's bolted directly into the body. You can see here, this is a replica of the way that Van Halen routed his own guitar. You know, to some luthiers, this would be ghastly. But to him, it was function over form. You know, there's nothing uncool about this guitar at all. This pickup was made and approved by Van Halen and Seymour Duncan. Seymour Duncan built it for him. Van Halen was in the shop approving it, looking for the right harmonic range. It's got a Floyd. You can bet his Floyd that he has on there currently looks pretty much exactly like this one, slightly shinier than the rest of the guitar. It's got the authentic must-have 1971 quarter, which he used to use as a trem stop to kind of make the trem land a little bit higher than it would normally. You'll see the back of the guitar, all its patented reflectors. You can bet that on his Frankenstein, this one is probably cracked just like that. Springs are in the same positioning with the one angled kind of funny on the bass side as it connects to the brass trem block. It's got the authentic 2 blobs of schmutz here, whatever this tar is. I'm pretty sure it's there. Cigarette burns in the right place. So that's really what you're paying for with this guitar, is you're paying to basically hold a guitar that is so similar to the original that only Eddie Van Halen and perhaps his guitar tech could tell it apart. Surprisingly, not the lowest action in the world. It's not like a shred metal setup. It's a little more of a bluesy setup than that, with the high frets. Of course, the neck is completely unfinished at this point. I don't know if it was that way. It started out that way. I think it did. And but it certainly it has that worn down, weathered, broken in feel. Surprisingly, for a $25,000 guitar, there were a couple of glitches when we first pulled this thing out of the box and started taking it for test rides. My biggest problem with it was actually shorting out here at the output jack. Now, I guess Van Halen has this shielded inside here. And this particular guitar, the wiring was exposed at certain solder points inside here, and it would bump into there sometimes and mute the guitar. So, truthfully, we yanked out that shielding and resoldered the connections to the output jack. And for a while, I even had some electrical tape on there to protect it, and it works great. The locking nut was actually just a micrometer loose, which you can't really tell until you do a couple of dive bombs and you wonder why the guitar is not quite going back in tune. easily fixed with a couple of quarter turns, maybe a half turn on these two hex bolts in the back. The only other kind of wonky thing was the bar was actually basically, it was on there, but it was hanging by a thread, and it was so loose. It's still loose, and Eddie Van Halen apparently keeps his bar pretty loose, but this is a lot tighter now. But nonetheless, this is just an absolute thrill ride for any Van Halen fan, or any fan of rock history. You know, this thing has so much of that vibe on there and that mojo. You really feel like you're in Eddie's shoes, in the classic Van Halen shoes, especially when the pickup gives you these tones that really do sound like classic Van Halen. I would compare it most, after having plugged it into a couple of Marshalls and the 5150, to the Women and Children First era Van Halen, which is that kind of scrappy, bluesy, but big rock metal sound that he had on that record. So, and you know, back off the volume knob, well, of course it's a tone knob, which he has on there, but only in lettering. It's actually, of course, a volume control. Back off on it and you get some nice half dirty, you know, half clean sound. So yes, there is that irony indeed that this guitar is 25 grand, and originally he spent, as he said in many interviews, probably no more than $150 in 70s cash on the parts to put this together.